I'm excited for our agents to share with you their opinions, ideas, and some concepts on negotiating deals for their clients.
In the market that we have today, it is very complex and challenging whenever it comes to negotiating for a home, whether it's the price or inspections, even fixtures that you want to keep in the house. But having an agent that can help you through that process and can work on those terms with you is so important. Being able to feel like coming through, you've gotten the best deal and had the best experience in purchasing a home.
The art of the deal when negotiating real estate is something that depends on who you're working for. You can be working for the buyer, you can be working for the seller. We had a really bad occurrence at one point, a deal that fell apart at the last minute. While they had the U-Haul loaded, we get the phone call, the deal falls apart, and what do you do at that point? So one thing that I like to do when I'm representing a seller that lives in a house full time is work out post-settlement occupancy. That way, the only way they're ever leaving that home is if they've closed, the check is in hand, the deed's signed, and then they rent it back for 3 days or 5 days, whatever you negotiate. But that is something that I think is really important when you negotiate.
When it comes to negotiation, one of the important things that I try to find out about someone is, number one, what kind of financing or way that you're buying the property is going to be, because that's going to tell me a lot about how we kind of need to structure things. If you're using more of an unconventional kind of finance, well then something like seller assist to possibly help with either a down payment or closing costs, I mean that's going to be something that we're going to want to ask for in our initial offer. If you're more of a cash buyer, we want to make sure that things are inspected and good for you before you move in, because at that point, if you're a cash buyer, more than likely you're not going to want to put a lot more cash probably into the property versus somebody who's financing where, hey, minimum cash down, maybe on an FHA loan at 3.5%. You've got a little bit more money. It's like, hey, we can come in here and we can fix these things that are maybe a problem, so that's not going to be as much of an issue. But things like that really go a long way in negotiating a deal for you.
That's what the business is really all about, right? Negotiating for your clients, getting them the best deal possible. Several key factors that play a role in good negotiation skills. One that I really like to pride myself on is having a good reputation amongst my colleagues here in the county. I may be newer as a real estate agent, but I've lived in Garrett County for a long time, and I know a lot of these professionals. Other than relying solely on having a good relationship with another agent, which does go a long way, you got to be knowledgeable with the local market here. You've got to know what the comps are, what things are selling for. It can change daily, and especially now, and you just have to be on top of that and really know what's happening. Mortgage rates play a factor in that, inventory, supply and demand, and you just have to put all that together and really come up with what you're negotiating about based on those key factors.
I had some buyer clients that were very interested in a home, and then I found out there were multiple offers on the home. So I told them we had to come in with the highest and best offer, and they loved the home so much that they offered above the asking price. But I told them they had to do it within their comfort zone. They decided, and I helped to guide them to forego the inspections and the survey because they really wanted to make their offer look good to the seller. And we waited a day, we were biting our nails, and in the end, their offer was accepted.
I've had my license for 20 years, working a good bit as a buyer agent, but also a lot as a seller agent as well. And working as a buyer agent, I think it's really important that if your client really likes a home and they're ready to make an offer, I always coach them. It's better to get your offer in as early as you can. Time is of the essence. That way you stand a better chance of not having other offers to compete against. You're going to learn a lot about how motivated the seller is. If they're going to accept it or if they're going to counter it, how much they're going to counter, how much off of their asking price. It's getting the conversation going with the seller and getting a negotiation going. If the counteroffer isn't what you want it to be, then you have a couple decisions to make. You can say, no, I'm not going to respond to that right away, and maybe make them sweat a little bit. Or you can counteroffer back at what you think a reasonable number is. The other thing you can do is you can say, well, I appreciate your counteroffer, but we're actually looking at other homes in the area, so we will think about it. You know, it's kind of like the old thing of when you're buying a car and you don't have the right price that you want for the car, you can always walk off the parking lot and say, we're going to go to the next dealership down the road. It's kind of a fine line of being a tough negotiator, but not losing the property.
So you have the property under contract, that's great, but there are many other things that may come up in between the contract to close time period, such as inspection issues. Ideally, we like to take care of those up front before we list a property, but inevitably there are going to be things that pop up. So it's important to keep that in mind going into it so you don't get quite so frustrated. There is not a perfect property. We will work between buyer's agent and seller's agent to make sure that things that are major get taken care of prior to closing. But we also need to keep in mind that not every little problem that might arise is a major problem, such as a light bulb. The other thing we need to keep in mind is closing date may change. So both parties need to understand that although it is in the contract, it may not actually be set in stone. So there are certain things along the way that pop up, and we need to try to remain flexible and meet everybody's needs.
I hope that you found this video to be informative. Maybe you learned something today about negotiation that you didn't know. Whenever you're ready to negotiate a deal, be sure to give Team TaylorMade a call. We're the experts and are ready to help you.